In a glittering Dubai skyscraper, a billionaire laughed as he prepared to crush a struggling CEO in a game of chess. Every move dripped with arrogance. The room echoed with quiet mockery. But just as victory seemed certain, a soft, innocent voice spoke a single sentence in Arabic. In that moment, the laughter died, and everything changed. The city glimmers below, 1,000 lights reflecting off glass towers. Inside the top floor of a skyscraper, the air feels different, still, expensive, heavy with power. A black marble chess table sits in the center of the room, its gold-trimmed pieces gleaming under soft light. Men in tailored suits speak in low, amused tones, their laughter polished, practiced. Daniel Reeves walks in quietly. His suit is clean but modest, borrowed from a friend. He doesn't belong here, not in this room where men trade power like currency. But he walks with a calm that unsettles even those who mock him. Sheikh Omar Al-Farouk leans back in his chair, fingers tapping the armrest, eyes locked on Daniel. A billionaire who built empires from sand and steel. His presence alone feels like a challenge. He smirks as Daniel approaches the chessboard. "Welcome," Omar says smoothly, his accent elegant and deliberate. "I heard you're good with numbers. Let's see if you're good with kings." The guests chuckle, glasses clink, the mood thickens. Daniel offers a small nod, no witty reply. He sits opposite the sheik. Their eyes meet across the board, two men from different worlds. One with everything to lose, one convinced he can't lose at all. A butler places a silent timer on the table. The sheik casually adjusts his cufflinks. "First move is yours," he says, almost like a dare. Daniel reaches forward, his fingers brushing the pawn. It's not just a game. For him, it's a chance, a fragile, dangerous chance. Omar tilts his head, watching closely. "Let's see how fast the king falls," he murmurs, just loud enough for Daniel to hear. The first piece moves. The game begins. But something in the air suggests that tonight, this isn't just about chess. Something much bigger is about to shift. The clock ticks softly, echoing in the grand silence of the room. Omar makes his first move with the ease of a man who's done this 100 times, leaning back as if the outcome is already decided. Daniel studies the board, not rushing, letting the silence stretch longer than the billionaire expects. A few guests exchange looks, some smirking, already tasting the victory they believe is inevitable. "Careful," Omar says, his tone light but sharp. "In my world, hesitation is death." Daniel doesn't respond. He slides a pawn forward, calm and steady. The move is simple, unremarkable, but it makes Omar's eyebrow twitch. He expected nerves, not quiet confidence. Around them, whispers start. One man leans toward another. "He's playing like he's not afraid," he murmurs in Arabic, and they both laugh quietly. They think this is a game between a lion and a stray dog. Omar strikes again, quick and aggressive, capturing a pawn with a knight, making a show of it. "Numbers may build your tiny company," he says, "but here, numbers mean nothing." Daniel meets his eyes, unflinching. He moves a bishop, blocking the attack, calm as ever. His mind flashes to nights spent at the kitchen table with Lily asleep on his lap, his hands balancing spreadsheets and old chess puzzles. This isn't new to him. Pressure is something he's lived with, not just tonight, but every day since he became a single dad. The sheik's friends start to circle the table like vultures smelling blood. One pulls out a wad of cash, whispering bets in the corner. Omar smirks wider. "Do you know how much one of these pawns costs in gold?" he asks softly, tapping a piece with his ring. Daniel doesn't look away. "Doesn't matter," he replies, voice quiet but steady. "They all move the same." Omar's smile tightens. The game continues, pieces clacking against the board like a quiet war. Move by move, the tension thickens. Omar plays for pride. Daniel plays for something far more dangerous, hope. Outside the heavy glass doors, Lily swings her legs on a leather bench that's far too big for her. Her tiny sneakers barely touch the floor. The hallway is quiet except for the muffled sound of distant laughter and the soft tapping of chess pieces echoing through the door. Daniel's assistant, a kind but nervous man in a gray suit, glances at his watch, sighs, and tries to distract her with a coloring app on his phone. She ignores it. Her eyes stay fixed on the golden handles of that door. She knows what's happening inside. Her father explained it in the car, just a game, but not really. Nothing about this night is just a game. He needs this deal. He needs to win. A guard leans against the wall a few feet away, speaking to another in Arabic. Their voices are low, but not low enough. One of them chuckles and shakes his head. The peasant thinks he can play the lion, he mutters. Lily doesn't understand every word, but she catches enough. She's heard that tone before, at school, at the grocery store, from people who look down without even seeing. Her little hands curl into fists. She presses her palm against the glass door, her breath fogging the clear surface. She can just barely see through the narrow crack between the curtains. Her dad, small in that big room, sitting across from a man wrapped in power like armor. She whispers softly to herself, "You can do it, Daddy." The assistant notices the way she's staring. "He's okay, Lily," he says gently. "Your dad's smart, really smart." But Lily shakes her head, still watching. She doesn't know about chess strategies or billion-dollar stakes. She only knows the way her dad's shoulders tighten when he's trying not to show fear. She knows the sound of his deep breaths when he's fighting everything at once. The guard laughs again inside, and she flinches. The world inside that room is built to keep people like her and her dad outside. But she's already decided in her small heart, if something goes wrong, she won't stay out here. She's not afraid of gold or suits or billionaires. She's only afraid of seeing her dad lose alone. Omar leans forward, the corners of his mouth lifting in a slow, deliberate smile. His queen slides across the board with a crisp clack, cornering Daniel's king with surgical precision. A soft murmur ripples through the room, the kind of sound people make when they're certain of the ending. Someone pops open a bottle of aged whiskey. Glasses fill. A man in a navy suit whispers, "It's over," in Arabic, and they laugh like they're at a private show, not a game. Daniel exhales slowly, staring at the board, his fingers resting on the edge of the table. The weight pressing on his chest isn't just the position of the pieces. It's the factory lease due next month, the investors pulling out, the look on Lily's face when she asked if everything would be okay. He's one move from losing. He knows it. Omar knows it. Everyone in the room knows it. Omar taps the top of his queen with a single finger. "Power," he says softly, "isn't about moving pieces. It's about making others believe you've already won." His voice cuts through the silence like a blade. "Business is the same. You build pawns, I build kingdoms." The guests laugh, toasting their glasses. Daniel lifts his gaze and meets Omar's eyes. For a brief second, something in that gaze shifts, not arrogance but curiosity. The billionaire expected panic. Instead, Daniel sits straighter, shoulders squared, not broken yet. The clock ticks. His hand trembles slightly as he hovers over the pieces, not from fear but from exhaustion, from everything he's been carrying for years. The board is a mirror of his life, a king cornered, options fading. But surrender isn't in his blood. A sound breaks through the laughter. Light footsteps. Lily, small and determined, slips through the barely open door. No one notices at first. She edges closer, clutching the hem of her little cardigan. Her wide eyes scan the room, the men in suits, the crystal glasses, the golden board. She sees her father's face, not scared, but tired. A guard notices and moves to stop her, but she's already standing at the edge of the room, her small presence slicing through the arrogance like a quiet storm. Omar tilts his head, amused. Daniel doesn't even turn, he just feels her there, like a reminder that this game isn't only about him. Omar leans in again. "Say goodbye to your king," he whispers. But Daniel doesn't, he just breathes, The game isn't over yet. The room stills. A soft, clear voice cuts through the layered laughter, through the sound of ticking clocks and clinking glasses. It's Lily. She stands at the doorway, small hands clutching the frame, looking straight at the man who holds everyone's attention. Her voice trembles, not from fear, but from being so small in a room built for giants. In perfect Arabic, she says, "Baba always says, even a pawn can surprise the king." The words land like a stone dropped into still water. Omar's smile falters. His hand freezes above the board. A silence spreads across the room, long and heavy. A guard blinks. One of the men lowers his glass. No one expected that language from a little girl with big brown eyes and a worn pink cardigan. Omar turns his head slowly toward her, his expression unreadable. His friends exchange quiet, awkward glances. A few of them shift in their seats. Lily doesn't move. She stands straight, just as she'd seen her father do when the world tried to push him down. Daniel turns, stunned, whispering, "Lily," but she doesn't look at him. Her gaze is locked on Omar, the man everyone else in the room seems to bend around. Omar's eyes narrow, not in anger, but in surprise. "Who taught you to speak like that?" he asks softly in Arabic. His voice is no longer mocking, it's curious. "My mama," Lily replies, still in Arabic. "She said chess is like life. Don't be afraid of big pieces. Even small ones can change everything." The silence sharpens. Omar leans back in his chair, studying her. This child who shouldn't even understand what's happening just shifted the energy of the room without moving a single piece. The men who were laughing a moment ago now sit quietly, unsure of what to say. Daniel swallows hard, feeling something stir inside him, a strength that had been buried under pressure. He looks at Omar and then back at the board. The billionaire's confidence isn't unshakable anymore. It's cracked. Omar finally lets out a slow exhale. His hand drops from the queen. His tone softens, the mocking edge gone. "Interesting," he mutters in Arabic, more to himself than to anyone else. Lily steps forward, just one step, small but steady. In that moment, the entire room no longer belongs to the man with all the power. It belongs to a 6-year-old who spoke the truth. Daniel's eyes lock on Lily, and for a heartbeat, the room fades away. All the pressure, the cold stares, the weight of losing, it all blurs. What's left is her voice echoing in his chest. Her mother's voice lives in that language. The nights he spent listening to his wife teaching their daughter soft Arabic phrases, the stories they whispered before bed, the quiet strength she carried until the end. It all floods back like light through a cracked door. Omar sits differently now, not lounging like a man toying with a victim, but straightening, curious, unsettled. His fingers rest on the edge of the board. The queen that looked invincible a moment ago suddenly doesn't feel so certain. Lily's small hand curls into a fist by her side, but her eyes stay fixed on him, as if daring the king to blink. Daniel breathes in slowly. He doesn't rush his next move. His mind starts to clear. He sees possibilities he hadn't before, not because the board changed, but because something inside him did. He moves his rook, sacrificing it deliberately, opening a line Omar didn't expect. The sound of the piece landing is sharp, final. Omar's eyebrows lift slightly. A few guests lean forward, confused. "Why would he do that?" someone whispers. Another shakes his head, sure it's desperation. But Omar knows better. He sees the trap forming like storm clouds on a clear day. Daniel meets his gaze. "It's not about what I lose," he says softly, more to himself than anyone. "It's about what's left." Omar's eyes flick back to the board. The shift is real now, tangible. The laughter that filled the room earlier is gone. No one moves. No one drinks. They're watching something unexpected unfold. Daniel sits taller, his hand brushing against Lily's as she stands beside him now. Her presence feels like armor. Omar taps his ring against the table, thoughtful. "That," he says in a quiet voice, was not a pawn's move. Daniel doesn't reply. He just watches Omar think for the first time tonight. The game isn't following his script anymore. The board still looks the same, but the power in the room has moved, quietly, completely. Omar leans closer to the board now, no longer wearing the mask of effortless dominance. His fingers hover above the pieces, but the calm certainty in his movements has vanished. Daniel sits silently, his breathing even, his eyes steady. The guests shift uneasily in their chairs, unsure how to react. What was supposed to be a quick, humiliating match is beginning to stretch, each move cutting through the air like a blade. Daniel advances a pawn with quiet precision, opening a path he's been waiting for. Omar counters quickly, but his timing is off. He's reacting now, not dictating. His knight falls into a trap, and before anyone fully processes it, Daniel claims it with a bishop. A few sharp breaths are heard. A glass is set down too quickly on the table, its sound breaking the stillness. Omar's jaw tightens. He forces a smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "Lucky," he mutters, but Daniel doesn't take the bait. He doesn't need to. Lily's tiny fingers slip into his. She doesn't say a word, but her presence settles into him like warmth in cold air. He squeezes her hand gently, not as reassurance for her, but for himself. She's the reason he came here. She's the reason he can't break. Omar looks at him longer than before. Something shifts in his expression, not anger, not humiliation, but the faintest flicker of recognition. His mind drifts, unbidden, to Cairo decades ago, when he sat at a small wooden table with his father. He remembers their cracked chessboard, the way his father laughed when he lost, the way life was before the money, before the power. For the first time tonight, he's not playing the CEO of empires. He's just a man remembering where he came from. Daniel's next move slides across the board like a quiet storm. His knight lands in perfect position, tightening the net around the king. Omar leans back, exhaling through his nose. He's being outplayed, not by someone richer or louder, but by a man who simply refused to fold. Lily's eyes stay wide on the board, not fully understanding the game, but feeling every heartbeat of it. The room that once laughed now holds its breath. The billionaire isn't untouchable anymore. The king is feeling the pressure. The board is a battlefield wrapped in silence. No one dares whisper now. The men who once chuckled lean forward, their faces drawn tight, as if any sound might break the fragile tension. Omar's fingers rest on the arm of his chair, no longer tapping in arrogance, but gripping like a man trying not to lose control. Daniel's eyes never leave the board. His movements are slow, deliberate, every piece placed with the weight of years behind it. He slides his queen forward with a steady hand, trapping Omar's last escape. The air shifts, sharp and electric. Omar stares at the board, searching for a way out that isn't there. The clock ticks louder. He looks up at Daniel, and for the first time tonight, he sees not a man beneath him but an equal, maybe even a threat. The last time Omar felt this cornered was years ago, when he was young and broke, when the world didn't bow to him. That feeling, the sting of power slipping through his fingers, creeps back, raw and unwelcome. He looks at Lily. She's standing right beside her father, small but steady, like a lantern in a storm. She meets his gaze, and she doesn't flinch. Daniel moves one final piece. A clean, elegant strike. "Checkmate," he says quietly, almost like it's not for the room at all, just for the memory of the woman who taught their daughter to believe in pawns. Omar blinks slowly. The word settles in. The room doesn't erupt or gasp, it just stills. Power has shifted, and everyone feels it. He stares at the board, at the king cornered with no way out. Then his shoulders drop, not in defeat, but in something else, something heavier, older. He rises from his chair slowly, every guest watching as the richest man in the room stands before the man he underestimated. Omar walks around the table. His polished shoes echo softly against the marble. He stops in front of Lily. She tilts her head up to meet him, unafraid. Then, in a gesture no one expects, Omar bows slightly, not to the man who beat him, but to the child who reminded him of something he'd long buried. In Arabic, his voice low and sincere, he says, "Your mother raised a queen." Daniel swallows hard, the weight of those words hitting deeper than any victory could. Omar extends his hand to Daniel. No mockery, no performance, just respect. And when Daniel shakes it, it's not the billionaire and the underdog anymore. It's two men on the same ground. The guests still haven't moved. It's as if the checkmate froze them in place. The soft hum of the air conditioning is the only sound breaking the silence. The man everyone had gathered to admire, the one they followed with laughter and shallow praise, is standing quietly with his head slightly bowed. Omar straightens slowly, his breath calm, his expression stripped of the smooth arrogance he wore like a uniform. His eyes find Lily again, and something in his chest stirs, something old and almost forgotten. He turns toward Daniel, still standing behind the chessboard, hands at his sides. For a long moment, they just look at each other. Daniel isn't triumphant. He's tired, the kind of tired that comes from years of scraping and pushing through doors built to stay closed. Omar isn't humiliated. He's remembering. It shows in the way his shoulders have lowered, in how his jaw has unclenched. The weight of power and ego seems to have cracked, letting something real breathe through. "Come with me," Omar says quietly. No theatrics, no spectacle, just a simple request. Daniel hesitates, but Lily's hand finds his, and together they follow Omar through a tall glass door that leads to his private lounge. The space is warm, filled with soft amber light and a wide window overlooking the sleeping city below. The noise of the world stays outside. Inside, it's quiet, intimate. Omar walks to the bar but doesn't pour himself a drink. He just stands there for a second, palms pressed against the polished surface, looking down. "You remind me of someone," he says finally, his voice stripped of the showman's polish. "Someone I haven't thought about in a long time." Daniel waits, unsure if this is another game, but Omar doesn't turn with a grin this time. He turns like a man speaking honestly. "My father," he continues. "He played chess with me every night in a one-room flat. We didn't have a board like that." He lets out a small breath through his nose, almost a laugh. "We used bottle caps for pawns, a cracked teacup for the king, but he taught me that respect is not something you inherit. It's something you give." Lily sits beside Daniel on a wide leather couch, her feet dangling in the air, still clutching his hand. Her presence softens the room. Omar looks at her and then at Daniel, and something shifts deeper. "Somewhere along the way," Omar says, "I forgot that lesson. I got so busy winning that I stopped seeing who I was playing against." He exhales, slow and deliberate. "Tonight, a little girl reminded me." Daniel isn't sure what to say. This man humiliated him an hour ago, mocked him in front of strangers. But the person speaking now doesn't sound like the same man. His voice carries the weight of someone peeling away layers he built to protect himself from ever being small again. "You're building something?" Omar says finally, turning fully toward Daniel. "I've read about your company. You want to bring clean energy to places no one bothers to think about. Remote schools, old neighborhoods, places without a voice." He steps closer, lowering his voice. "Do you know why I mocked you?" Daniel shakes his head. "Because I saw the man I used to be, and I hated him. I hated remembering what it felt like to be ignored." Omar's jaw flexes, but his voice doesn't rise, it steadies. "I thought crushing you would prove to myself that I'd become something bigger, but it didn't. It just made me small again." Daniel listens silently. He's not sure if he can forgive, not yet, but something about the way Omar is speaking doesn't feel rehearsed. This isn't a billionaire smoothing over his ego. This is a man cracking it open. Omar turns to the wide window, the glittering city stretching below like a sea of gold. "I've built towers," he says softly, "but towers mean nothing if you forget the ground you started from." He turns back, walking toward Daniel with a quiet resolve. "I want to fund your project," he says simply. Daniel blinks, caught off guard. Omar doesn't pause. Not as a charity, not as a handout, a partnership. You build the vision, I'll give it wings. I have resources, you have heart. Together, maybe we build something that matters. Daniel stares at him, unsure if this is real. Why? He finally asks, his voice low. Because tonight, a man reminded me that power doesn't make you better. It just makes your mistakes bigger. And a little girl reminded me that pawns aren't weak. They're the ones who change the game. Lily looks up at Omar with wide eyes. She doesn't fully understand the business talk, but she understands the way he's speaking now. He's not talking down anymore. He's talking across. Omar kneels slightly so he's eye level with her. You have a brave heart, he says in Arabic, his voice warm now. Your mother would be proud. She smiles shyly, clutching her father's hand tighter. Daniel clears his throat. He's been fighting to keep his company alive for years, knocking on doors that stayed shut. And now, here stands the man who slammed the door the hardest, opening it instead. He nods slowly. If we do this, Daniel says carefully, we do it right. No control, no strings, just building something real. Omar extends his hand without hesitation. Real, he echoes. Daniel takes it. Their hands meet not like rivals, not like king and pawn, but like two men who finally see each other. Behind them, the city keeps glowing. But inside that quiet room, something far more powerful is built, not from money or status, but from humility, respect, and a little girl's voice that cut through everything. The same men who once laughed outside now glance through the glass, their expressions unreadable. Some are confused, some impressed, some quietly shaken. Lily tugs Daniel's sleeve. Did we win? She whispers. Daniel looks down at her and smiles. Yeah, he says softly, we did. Omar looks at them both, and for the first time in years, the feeling in his chest isn't triumph. It's something cleaner, lighter, a quiet kind of peace. The kind he'd almost forgotten existed. The night outside stretches over the city like a soft black ocean, glittering with golden lights. The skyscrapers stand tall, silent guardians over a world built on power, ambition, and forgotten dreams. But inside the quiet lounge, the air is different now. The arrogance that once filled the room has dissolved into something still, something human. Daniel sits with Lily curled against his side, her head resting on his arm. She's tired, but there's a smile tucked into the corners of her mouth. A few hours ago, they were standing on the edge of humiliation. Now, something heavier and brighter lingers in the space between them. Omar stands near the window, his reflection floating in the glass, the city behind him like a crown he never really wore. For the first time in years, he isn't thinking about profit margins, investments, or headlines. He's thinking about a cracked chessboard, a small kitchen in Cairo, and his father's rough hands guiding his own as he moved a pawn forward for the first time. He remembers the way his father smiled and said, "Never forget where the board starts." He's been so far away from that boy for so long. Tonight, a single sentence from a 6-year-old brought him back. The soft click of the door announces the return of the guests. They enter hesitantly, unsure if they're walking into a continuation of the spectacle or something they're not supposed to see. Their laughter is gone. Their confident smirks replaced with quiet uncertainty. They see Omar standing alone, hands in his pockets, and Daniel with his daughter beside him. The billionaire doesn't bark orders. He doesn't act like the king of the room. He just turns and faces them, as if standing on the same ground as everyone else. I know what you expected, Omar says, his voice calm, steady, carrying no sharp edges now. You expected a performance. You expected a king and a pawn. He looks around the room, meeting their eyes one by one. But sometimes the game reminds you the board doesn't belong to the king. It belongs to whoever dares to keep moving. There's no applause, no nervous laughter, just silence. His friends, partners, and advisors don't know how to respond to this version of him. The man who ruled every conversation has turned it inside out. Daniel rises slowly, Lily still holding his hand. His heart is beating differently now, not fast, not anxious, but full. He looks at Omar, unsure whether to say something or let the moment breathe. He doesn't need to fill the silence. It's already full. Omar takes a step toward him, lowering his voice. "You know," he says, "I've played against some of the best. Grandmasters, men who calculate moves like machines. I've crushed them, but no one's ever beaten me like this." He lets a faint smile touch his mouth, not the sharp smile of a man showing teeth, but the quiet curve of someone humbled. Not because of your moves, but because of what stood behind them. Daniel looks down at Lily. She's blinking sleepily, but still listening. She doesn't realize the weight of what she did. She only spoke. She spoke the language of her mother, the language she loved, and it cracked open something no one else could touch. Omar kneels again, looking Lily in the eyes as if she were someone far older. "Do you know what happens when a pawn reaches the other side of the board?" he asks gently. She tilts her head. "It becomes something powerful," he says softly. "Something no one expected. That's what you did tonight." She smiles shyly, hiding her face against Daniel's sleeve. Omar laughs quietly. It's a real laugh, not the practiced one that echoes in business halls. One of the guests clears his throat nervously. "Sheikh Omar, the deal?" he ventures. Omar turns and his gaze sharpens, not with arrogance, but clarity. "The deal stands," he says, "but not the way we planned. I will not invest in something to own it. I will build it to grow with it. That's the difference between ruling and leading." The guest nods, unsure how to navigate this new tone. The others look at each other, realizing the man they follow is changing in front of them. Daniel watches quietly. He's spent years fighting uphill, being the man people talk down to, being underestimated in every boardroom. But here, in this moment, there's no ceiling over his head. There's no one laughing above him. There's just two men who came from different worlds, meeting at the same table. Omar walks closer, offering his hand once more, but this time it isn't just a handshake, it's an unspoken promise. "We'll start tomorrow," he says. "Your vision, my resources. No one owns the board, we build it together." Daniel takes his hand. Their handshake is firm, grounded, and quiet. Around them, the room doesn't burst into celebration. No champagne, no applause, just a steady, calm wait, the kind of moment people remember for the rest of their lives. Lily yawns softly, resting her head against her father's arm. Omar looks at her with something close to tenderness. "She will grow up knowing her father didn't bow to anyone," he says, almost to himself. "That's worth more than any win." Daniel nods. She'll grow up knowing pawns matter. Outside the window, the city stretches endlessly. But up here, the world feels smaller, closer, truer. Omar moves back toward the chessboard that started it all. The pieces are still frozen in their final positions, the king trapped, the queen poised like a quiet revelation. He reaches down, gently lifts the black king, and sets it upright in the center of the board. "Even kings fall," he murmurs, "but the wise ones learn to stand again." The guests start to drift out quietly, their conversations hushed, each of them knowing they've witnessed something that doesn't happen in rooms like this. Power usually roars. Tonight, it bent its head. Daniel gathers Lily into his arms. She wraps her arms around his neck, warm and half asleep. "Did we really win, Daddy?" she mumbles against his shoulder. He smiles softly, looking down at the golden chessboard one last time. "We didn't just win," he whispers to her. "We changed the game." As he turns to leave, Omar calls out, "Daniel." Daniel pauses. Omar stands near the window, silhouetted against the city lights. "You're not the underdog anymore," Omar says quietly. "Never let anyone make you feel small again." Daniel nods once, a silent promise to himself. He steps through the glass doors with Lily in his arms. The hallway is quiet. The laughter that once leaked through these walls is gone. All that remains is the soft sound of his footsteps and Lily's slow breathing against his chest. Omar remains in the lounge, staring out over Dubai. For years, he's believed power lived in how hard you could crush the weak. But tonight, a little girl reminded him that power is also in how gently you can listen. He exhales slowly, feeling something in him shift for good. Hours later, as the building grows quiet, Omar returns to the chessboard alone. He moves the pieces back to their starting places, one by one. His fingers linger on the pawns. He smiles softly to himself. No one will see this moment, but it's the truest one he's had in a long time. He whispers his father's old words in Arabic, words he hasn't spoken in years. Respect the pawns. They're the ones who build the game. The city outside doesn't change, but he does. In the morning, deals will be signed. Projects will begin, but none of it will carry the cold, sharp edge of conquest. It will carry the quiet strength of something built together. And somewhere down the line, people will tell this story again. Not about a billionaire who mocked a CEO, but about a girl who spoke one sentence and changed the room. A pawn who reminded a king what power really means.